Zora Neal Hurston. January 7, 1891, in Notasulga, Alabama, John and Lucy Ann Hurston gave birth to their fifth child, Zora Neal Hurston. John and Lucy were former slaves who went on to create a life for their family. John was a preacher, carpenter, and tenant farmer, while Lucy Ann was a school teacher. While Hurston was a very young girl, around the age of 3, her family moved to Eatonville, Florida, one of the first incorporated all-black towns within the United States. Hurston was known for declaring Eatonville as her place of birth because it captured a special place in her heart. This was a town where black excellence was on display at all times for everyone to witness. Her father, John Hurston, even became mayor of Eatonville around 1897. In 1901, Hurston was introduced to new types of literature as school teachers from the North visited Eatonville. This was the beginning of Zora Neal Hurston becoming a literary giant. Her mother would die in 1904. Shortly after, her father remarried a woman named Mattie Moog, who Hurston was not very fond of. Hurston and Moog engaged in a physical altercation. Shortly after, Hurston was sent to a Baptist boarding school in Jacksonville, Florida. While attending the boarding school, Hurston's parents could not afford to continue to pay her tuition. She eventually left the school to become a maid for the lead singer of the Gilbert and Sullivan traveling troupe. By 1917, Hurston was 26 years old and wanted to earn her high school diploma, so she reduced her age by 10 years and enrolled into the High School of Morgan State University. She earned her diploma within a year, then attended Howard University. She was one of the initial women to become a part of the Zeta Phi Beta sorority incorporated. As a student at Howard University, Hurston founded a school newspaper called The Hilltop, studied Greek, Spanish, English, and public speaking. She would earn her associate's degree in 1920 from Howard University. Then she attended Barnard College at Columbia University in 1925 as the only black student. In 1921, Hurston would be admitted into the Elaine Lott Literary Club, The Stylist, after writing her short story titled John Redding Goes to Sea. In 1928, she earned a bachelor's degree in anthropology from Barnard College at the age of 37. During the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s, Hurston found herself within the mix, mingling with figures such as Langston Hughes, Ethel Waters, Countee Cullen, and many more. She was the southern woman in the big northern city who attracted the giants of the Harlem Renaissance to her tiny apartment for laughs and friendship. She was also beginning to make a name for herself as a writer. She placed in the playwriting contest for Opportunity magazine, which helped her to gain notoriety. She was also publishing short stories, articles, and novels such as JONAH'S Vine and Mules and Men. In 1927, Hurston married the jazz musician turned physician Herbert Sheen until their divorce in 1931. She later married a man named Albert Price in 1939, which only lasted 7 months. She would write literary masterpieces during the 1930s and 40s, which included, but are not limited to, Their Eyes Were Watching God, JONAH'S Vine, Tell My Horse, Moses, Man of the Mountain, and Dust Tracks on the Road. She lived in Westfield, New Jersey during the 1930s, but her community involvement was not limited to her state. Hurston established a School of Dramatic Arts at Bethune-Cookman College. The school was designed to be based on pure Negro expressions. In 1942, she received critical acclaim for her writings. She was profiled in publications such as Who's Who in America, Current Biography, and 20th Century Author. Hurston added an additional masterpiece to her catalog in 1948 by writing the novel Seraph on the Swanee. Hurston immersed herself in anthropological studies during college, which helped her to gain a sponsorship from a well-known anthropologist, Charlotte Osgood Mason. Conducting these studies allowed her to travel the globe during the 1930s, which had a profound impact on her writings. She was able to study the cultures of the Caribbean and South America, which inspired her to write JONAH'S Vine in 1934 and Mules and Men in 1935. With funding from the Guggenheim Foundation, Hurston traveled to Jamaica and Haiti on an anthropological mission, but once again found inspiration for her writings. This trip helped her to write the book Tell My Horse in 1938. Hurston spent her time in South America during the 1940s, where she lived in Puerto Cortez, Honduras, and studied the diversity of the Mosquito, Zambu, and Garifuna cultures, both of who have their ancestral lineages in Africa. While in Puerto Cortez, she would write Seraph on the Swanee, a book based on the Swanee regions of Central Florida. While visiting Honduras, Hurston was falsely accused of molesting a 10-year-old boy. The accusations was found to be false, but her reputation was tainted. 1952 was the year that Hurston was contacted by a man named Sam Nunn, who was the editor of the Pittsburgh Courier. Nunn wanted Hurston to travel to Florida to report about Ruby McCullum, who was accused of murdering a white doctor and politician. Ruby McCullum was a black woman who stated that the doctor forced her to have sex with him and bear his child. Hurston was familiar with these stories. She learned about white men forcing themselves upon hopeless black women under the paramour rights. The paramour rights gave the women who were preyed upon the status of a slave, which also included sexual violence. Hurston and Nunn were determined to expose these inhumane conditions, but not without resistance. Hurston next traveled to Live Oak, Florida to gain more evidence from the residents for her story. Little did she know the residents at the time were not willing to speak to her. Some residents were threatened and the others followed a code of silence. Hurston eventually gathered information and published her articles, but Ruby McCullum was convicted by an all-white jury of only men and sentenced to death. Hurston's relationship with Nunn ended when they disagreed upon payments for her research. She later contacted a journalist named William Bradford Huey because she needed help to cover the appeal in the second trial of Ruby McCullum. Huey agreed to help Hurston, and Huey covered the story himself. He used the information he collected and the data Hurston collected to write the best-selling book, Ruby McCullum, Woman in the Swanee Jail. One major problem with the success of the book is Hurston was barely acknowledged for the information she provided Huey. Even though Hurston did not receive the credit she deserved, she was happy the book helped to end paramour rights. Hurston was awarded the Bethune-Cookman College Award for Higher Education and Human Relations in 1956. The English department of Bethune-Cookman College has used its resources to preserve the legacy of Zora Neal Hurston in honor of her achievements. Also in 1956, she served as a faculty member of the North Carolina College for Negroes. In 1957, Hurston was fired from her job at the Pan American World Airways Technical Library at Patrick Air Force Base because she was too educated for a black person. She would move to Fort Pierce, Florida later in life, looking for work to sustain herself. She worked as a substitute teacher before turning to public assistance. Despite all of the literary contributions Hurston made, she never received the financial compensation she deserved. January 28, 1960, Zora Neal Hurston died of a stroke, but laid the groundwork for other African-American authors such as Alice Walker to follow her. Hurston was a woman who learned to use her experiences, intelligence, and creativity to turn the American literary world on its head. Zora Neal Hurston, we proudly stand on your shoulders. For more information, please visit www.ontheshoulders1.com.